Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, The Grim Reader. Here's my weekly update for Sunday, August 13th. First off, I wanted to give you a stationery update. Some of you know that I'm a bit of a stationery, it's one of my hobbies, all different kinds of washi, stickers, bullet journaling, etc. And I recently made the switch from doing a journal every day to an overview for the week. And the book that I'm doing it in, and my new bullet journal, is this beautiful journal from a company called Archer and Olive. And I'll just give you a brief look at the journal itself. This is what it looks like for this week. And I'm not going to do flip throughs anymore, but it's all on my stationery Instagram if you're interested. And so it's a weekly thing, and what I really like about it is how organic the process is. You start with stickering, you start with kind of pre-figuring out the layout for the week, and then you sort of fill it in as the week progresses. It's a mixture of forward planning and memory keeping, which I actually really like, and I'm quite happy with it. And I hope that I will stick with it. The thing about being a stationery obsessive person and notebook obsessive person is that some people are just very open about switching around journals. For this week they'll do that, for a couple of weeks they'll do one, and for a couple of weeks they'll do another one. I still have this idea of wanting to do one and then doing the next one. It's a little bit like the reading, isn't it? Like we switch around or have multiple things at the same time. But for now I'm going to try and stick with this one. So first off, I'm looking at my little topics here. This is the etc. part of the video. Mr. T, our beautiful tan cat that we inherited from a home where he was not happy, and he was rehomed with us. And so the whole story about he was rehomed because he is a kind of cat, perhaps for things in his past. He's someone who has to be let out and come back in, and he found the perfect sort of silly people who actually do that, who actually let him in and out just as he pleases, more or less. And this is the only cat that we do this with. All our other cats are completely indoor. Okay, granted, we let Lily walk around in our pretty nice backyard. It's fine. But the others are we're indoor cat people. We just think that they're safer in that way, and it's definitely true. I mean, our outdoor kitty Opus that you may have seen pictures of in the past, he's all uncared for and matted, and just it's a different type of existence. Anyway, Mr. T's basically an indoor kitty who we do let outside. He had to go see the vet because he's been limping pretty badly the whole summer long, and we took him once, and they took out a tiny little piece of thing from his paw. He kept on limping, and it seemed to not be getting better at all. And now we've done the thing where we've actually paid for x-rays, etc., and we found out that it's a soft tissue. There's nothing bone related. There's no kind of autoimmune bone cancer type thing going on. He didn't break it. It's just some kind of soft tissue issue, and he's perhaps slowly getting better, we hope. He's fine. I mean, he doesn't seem to be in great pain. If he were in great pain, we would try and give him a medication for that too. But we just got him completely checked out, and we're okay with just leaving him be for now. So that's Mr. T, whom you know from the social medias. The next thing is, I feel a little bit bad about this. So I received this really pretty card from Wellington, New Zealand, and it's from someone called Ellen, who has my address, and I don't know in what context she knows me or how she got my address. At first I was convinced it was something to do with post-crossing, but I checked and there's no connection to post-crossing that it can really have. And so, Ellen, are you there? Are you a viewer? And the thing is, I do have vague memories of talking about Wellington. I'm really sorry if I've just missed the connection there, the specific one-on-one connection. I feel bad. It could be from another social media, Twitter, whatever, ex-Twitter, which is, I hate Twitter now, of course. Anyway, Ellen, if you're there, or if anyone knows who Ellen is in Wellington, I really like the card, both the front and then what she wrote on it is very wonderful too, talking about the lovely, quiet, thoughtful time connected to the Maori New Year. So I'm reaching out to see if I can find out who Ellen is, and I really thank you for the card. So I feel so bad. I've missed something there. I missed some kind of connection. My adult, almost 60-year-old brain is giving out on me. Okay, now finally we get to the reading. And first off, the buddy read. So one buddy read has been put on hold just because. So for me, A Gentleman in Moscow was suffering from being read alongside Bulgakov, and we've all just kind of decided that for now we're putting that one on hold. And life gets in the way. Of course, it happens. So no problems there. Maybe we'll come back to it. I was becoming less enthralled with its text style. I don't know, it was losing me a little bit and I was struggling. So it's on hold for now, but that's not to say that we may not come back to that one or a different one by Immortals. So bye-bye, A Gentleman in Moscow. Meanwhile, Bulgakov is going really well. The Master Margarita is still a fantastic tale, but I don't quite know what to make of it. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the ride, but I don't quite understand it. And so, as I was telling Sarah, it's sort of playing around with these three narratives. The devil comes down to Moscow as opposed to Georgia, which I don't know. Does anyone remember that song? I remember listening to that on AFN radio in Germany. I would listen to this country music show. It was the only time I listened to country music, really, in Germany, and they were pretty funny, the people who did the show, and some of the songs were so cheesy but entertaining. There's this terrible song called Afternoon Delight. And they just had a funny way. Anyway, it's like my memories of the first years in Germany. Actually, we listened to AFN a lot in Germany. We particularly, I remember all of the family, well, my mother and all of us, we liked the Christmas. Like, we would listen to the FM Christmas, and we would sort of gauge how close we are to Christmas based on how often they would play a Christmas song on their other channel. Anyway, AFN memories. American American Forces Network in Germany. Anyway, that was a complete digression. But back to Bulgakov. So you have the devil comes to Moscow, and him and his hilarious cohort of this weird guy who's shape-shifting and who wears weird clothes, and the cat, they wreak havoc on everyone in hilarious and entertaining ways. And even though they're the devil and it's, dark, whatever, it's sort of funny and entertaining and fairly light, even though, well, it's light, but the thing, it's as if it's pointing out the weaknesses of humanity and the human foibles in terms of wanting pretty things and wanting money, and sort of holding up a mirror to the fact that most people are very shallow and materialistic. And this is, of course, he wrote it between 1928 and 1940 in Moscow. So there is this sort of poking fun at humanity's predilection for stuff. And then the other narratives are Pontius Pilate, which is the one that I am definitely not on firm ground with how that somewhat somber, because it's about the crucifixion, narrative fits in with the other stuff. And then the other one is the Master and Margarita, so the love story of this writer who's actually writing a novel about Pontius Pilate. And one idea that I had, but I'm not quite sure how much I want to roll with it, is that the chapters devoted to Pontius Pilate are actually the novel he's writing. I don't know. But it's weird how, and Pontius Pilate comes out in conversation, it's sort of like the red thread, even though I'm not quite sure how it all works. But it's just a really entertaining and fun read, despite it being so strange, and despite the fact that I'm not getting it all. And it's sort of experimental, and it's very modern and fun. It's a fun, interesting satire, and it's quite well written. And my translation, I have yet to mention the translator. I apologize. So my version of it has been translated by Mira Ginsburg, and I think that might be a different one from Sarah. And I think as far as I can tell, I mean, what do I know about Russian? I mean, I took it for one semester. Здравствуйте. That's hello in Russian, but I'm saying it. When I took Russian, my wonderful colleague, friend, he would make fun of my German accent. And he speaks German better than I speak Russian. And when he speaks German, he does sound rather Russian, I have to say. Anyway, point being that I think it's a good translation as far as I can tell. I mean, it flows, so it's well written, thoroughly enjoyable, and we'll see how it goes. We'll be finished in a couple more, maybe 2 more weeks. That's that. Moving on into Little Dorrit. Okay, so Little Dorrit is a very long novel, 8 of the second book. Okay, so general thoughts about Dickens and Little Dorrit specifically. He wrote it between 1855 and 1857, and first of all, it's a book that has a lot of plot. A lot of plot. A lot of characters and a lot of plot. I would say even more, or... So what I mean by... So one thing that happens, there's a big shift in fortunes of the main characters. And so that's why it seems sort of... That's one reason why it's different from Bleak House, which seemed to sort of be more gradual. Like you didn't have this big shift. And the big shift is reminiscent of a fairy tale, and that's one thing I just have been thinking about. So I'm getting ready to teach fairy tales yet again, and my main job is to teach fairy tales. And so with fairy tales, you often have this sense of a rise tale, and a rise tale is Cinderella. A rise tale is, well, a rise tale always involves a fall. So the sort of the rise of the people's fortunes and the fall and the rise again. And so with Little Dorrit, you have very much a rise in the middle of from the transition from book 1 to book 2. The rise in the fortunes of the main people. I'm being deliberately general to not be too spoilery. And I have to say, so there's a lot of fairy tale stuff comes to mind. It's almost, I was having this idea that Dickens is like really, really long fairy tales because of the fact that it draws you in and you read it, but it doesn't seem really very realistic. So that's one thing that's like fairy tales. And there's also no overt magic. That's the other thing. It's more when Dickens has a lot of gothic stuff in him. It's not like Wilkie Collins, but there's a lot of gothic, like with the Flintwitch and his poor Stockholm Syndrome wife. Afri Flintwitch. That's all gothic. That's gothic Dickens. So there's that. And in terms of fairy tales, I've already mentioned Cinderella, the rise tale aspect of it, which is sort of far-fetched. And Little Dorrit specifically, her character, she's a Cinderella. She's good, surrounded by awful people, specifically awful siblings, and parent too, but with the fairy tales, it's more the siblings. And in a way, that's also connected to one of the versions that we read, the shorter French version of Beauty and the Beast. Jean-Marie de Beaumont wrote, there's a long version of Beauty and the Beast that's like hundreds of pages long, and then there's the one that we read, which is shorter, and it involves Beauty has 2 awful sisters and 3 brothers that don't really enter into it, but the 2 sisters are very prominent, and they're awful. They're comically awful and mean. They're very mean because they're jealous of Beauty, because of she's so perfect. She's definitely she's perfection, and they are not. And so with Little Dorrit, you get the same thing. She's sort of so good. She's unrealistically introverted and retiring, and there's obviously sort of psychologically something going on. One of the rubrics, sorry to talk about my class so much, that I've structured the course according to different rubrics and themes, is dysfunctional families, and I capitalize the fun, the putting back the fun in dysfunctional. And, this is a highly dysfunctional family with this weird father, and Little Dorrit is perfect except for the fact that she doesn't realize how not perfect her father is. For some reason, I don't know why. And so she reminds me of those fairy tales, and then for some reason she also reminds me a little bit of the family and persuasion, the awfulness of the family versus the not awfulness of Anne Elliot. And last but not least, if you think of Fanny in Mansfield Park, she's like, Little Dorrit is even more hard to swallow than someone like Fanny Price, I guess. Is that her last name? I think it's Fanny Price. In Mansfield Park. She's so unassuming and so selfless that she's a little bit, it's hard to sort of, we root for her, but she's unrealistic as a character. Yeah, it's going really well. It's just really long. And because it's sort of so up and down, Oh, another connection I saw was to Clarissa, the awfulness of the family versus the non-awfulness of Clarissa. So yeah, it's going really well. There's a lot. That's where I'll leave it for that. And that brings me to the last part here, which is what else am I going to read besides listening to Little Dorrit and reading Master and Margarita now that we've put the other book on hold. One thing that I started, I got a copy of a book called The Ghost Variations. Damien Lanigan, and he and Neil Griffiths, who had a booktube channel, they have this publishing company called Weatherglass Books, so they publish independent authors, and I think Damien is a co-owner or co-publisher of this Weatherglass Books, and I got a copy of his novel called The Ghost Variations, and I started reading it, but I think I want to wait and come back to it. And basically what it is it's focusing on, it's contemporary, so I always have to be a little bit like, adjust my expectations for contemporary stuff just because I'm so not used to it, I'm immersed in things like Little Dorrit. But it's, what interested me about it was that it's focusing on a piano player, so a top-notch piano player who's mourning, I think, his wife, and sort of he's stepped back from being a performer, and now he wants to come back to it. And so it's sort of about the classical music scene and how sort of that's the world that it takes place in. And I thought that was of interest to me, so I'm going to come back to that one. And then last but not least, what I thought I would really want to do, or what I really want to do before the end of the year, is read at least finish the first volume of Pilgrimage by Dorothy Richardson. Now, she's someone I probably would like to, maybe I'll just give you updates since I'm doing the weekly ones now. I'll devote more time to who she was and her work, her 13-volume autobiographically inspired work called Pilgrimage 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 volumes of 3 short novels. And I want to read the last one, which is really quite short, called Honeycomb. The first one was Pointed Roofs, takes place in Hanover, Germany, mainly. The second one was Backwater, which I really, really enjoyed. Very stream of consciousness, very female-centric, kind of dreamy and a slower pace, but I'm there for that, as we know. And then the last one is Honeycomb, and I don't really know much about what happens in here. And yeah, so that's going to be my other read, other than Master and Margarita and listening to Little Dorrit, and sometimes looking at the text of Little Dorrit too. So yeah, that's my little update. Hope everyone's doing well. We'll have to see how the weekly things turn out. Yeah, especially once school starts, but week 2 is fine, and I will see you soon, and I welcome all comments. And Ellen, tell me how you found out who I am and how you got my address and all that good stuff. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.